Good evening, everybody. Give me just a second here. Alright. Thanks, everybody, for joining me this evening. I really appreciate it. And first, I'd like to apologize for the delay in any streams this week. Had a lot going on. As most of you... Give me one second. Camera is hating me. There we go. As most of you know that have been here the last week or so, I spent last weekend at PAX East. That was my first time that I had actually been at PAX East, so it was really, really very funny. So I was really, really excited about that. And as I was coming home from that, there was some train delays, and then when I got home I found out that we didn't have electricity and thus no internet, so yeah, couldn't stream. I didn't have control over either of those things, unfortunately, so that's just kind of how the end of my weekend went with that. We did get power back on Tuesday, and then we got internet back on Thursday this week. So it was a bit rough. Wasn't able to stream Sunday or Wednesday. So trying to make up for that this evening. And yeah, I was able to meet Jackie from SWTOR. She's the community manager. I got to meet her on Saturday afternoon at the SWTOR community meetup. So that was really cool. Got to meet her. Got to meet Katarina Forley, also known as Castails, on Twitch. Got to meet both of them, and also some of her friends as well. Really, really great group of people. Got to hang around with them for a while on Saturday. So it was really fun. I went to a couple of panels on Sunday. I bought a couple of things. She really is. She's so sweet. She's just so phenomenal and just really amazing. And camera is not focusing. I have no idea why. Give me a second. Anyway, we're just gonna go with that. Yeah, she's pretty awesome. Got to hang around with her and Katarina and Intisar, and I don't know, I think there was about 10 or a dozen of us at the meetup. There was a lot of people. There's a picture in my Discord, so if you are in my Discord and you want to go look at the pictures, check out the PAX East 2024 channel. I haven't added a Discord command yet in the Twitch stuff. I'll get there. Yeah, I did definitely. I did buy a couple of things. I didn't buy a whole lot of stuff because I was trying not to spend all of my money. So, let's see if this works with my background. Hey, it does! So I stopped by the Lorient Studios booth and got these. They're pretty cool. That was one of the things that I bought. And the other thing that I bought was okay, he's not here. I can probably get away with this. Camera's being a punk. I apologize. There we go. And the other thing that I got, let's see if this will work. Got these. I also got some SWTOR swag. Unfortunately, I don't think they're going to... Yeah, they're really, really nice. Those are the... Let me find the other end of the box. Those are the Crimson Nebula dice set from Dispel. They make some very, very nice dice. I got some dice from them actually during their Kickstarter with Wormwood Gaming. They did a Kickstarter back during COVID where they were making some really nice gemstone dice, and I got their amethyst set at that point. So those are the two things that I actually bought. I did get some SWTOR swag. There's pictures in the Discord. Unfortunately, I can't really find that stuff right now because I put it away so I wouldn't lose it. But there's some pictures in Discord if you guys want to take a look. And actually, if anybody would like an invite to the Discord, let me know if you're not already in there, and I will. You can send me a whisper on Twitch, I think, and I should be able to get you a link, or I can drop it to one of my mods and they can get it for you. So give me just 1 second while I get things situated over here. So yeah, PAX was fun. Got to meet lots of cool people, and yeah, I am messing with my interface here. Give me a second. I'm gonna do this. Alright. You know what? Sorry, I'm messing with skirts window arrangement. Yeah, we're gonna do that. Okay. I'm sorry for what I said. But you're here. Welcome in. Great to see you. And Celia and Harpax and whoever else is here. I'm not looking at who all is here, so those are the ones I see in chat. But I appreciate those who are here. Thank you. Yeah, let me grab that for you while I'm thinking about it before I forget. Thank you, Harpax. Give me just 2 seconds. Okay. Oh, goodness. There we are. I don't want that one. Okay. Oh, I'm working on that. Give me a second. Sorry. Oh dear. Oh man. Why is it not letting me copy that? Oh, you know what? It's probably because I'm in streamer mode. Ugh. Give me a second. Whoa. I am still learning how a community server works and how things work with streamer mode, so just bear with me a little bit. Oh man. Okay. Oh my word, why is that not working? Yeah, it Oh, weird. I don't know. Oh, dear. I might have to set up a new invite link. Give me 2 seconds. It's not letting me copy the one that I was using. So... Okay. Yeah, I don't know why it's not letting me copy it. But so yeah, I will deal with that in a little bit. Okay. All right. Yeah. I can't find it right now. It's not letting me copy it. But I will get you the link here later. Harpax, once I sort that out. I'm still sorting out on the technical side of things, quite obviously. So, still learning how it all works, so just bear with me a little bit. Alright. So the last time that we were all together, we finished the final story in the Healer quadrilogy, which was called Time Heals All Wounds. It was relatively short, about 7 chapters. It never actually got finished. So that's where I stopped the last time we were all together. And so tonight, what I would like to do is pick up on the next series with the first story. This next series is called The Sith Duology. There was actually originally a 3rd story in this when my friends and I were writing it originally, but due to the fact that I didn't write very much in that one, I didn't feel that it was right to include it. So when I posted these on Archive of Our Own, I only included the 2. So the story that we're going to start with tonight is called To All Things an End, and it is the first of 2 stories in this series. Also, before I dive in, thank you everyone that's here. Thank you for choosing to spend your evening with me. I know it might be kind of late for some of you. It's a lot later than I would normally stream, trying to make up for the fact that I wasn't here for 2 streams this week that were planned. So, yeah. And I apologize if I miss anything in chat. I am attempting to pay attention, but it's a little difficult when I am trying to also keep track of other things, Discord and the like. So please understand that I'm not ignoring you intentionally if I miss something you say in chat. I am trying to pay attention, so please bear with me. Alright. So if you have any questions while I'm reading, please feel free to post them in the chat and I will get to them as soon as I can. There is a story fact command that you can use that should get my attention. If for some reason I miss it, I will get to it when I'm able. And you can feel free to play with all of the chat cat commands to your heart's content. That's why they're there. And if you have any point redeems, I should hopefully see them pop up. I have them set up, so I should see them now. So, alright. So let's get started. To All Things an End. Chapter 1. Calbrea System. Thames was pacing back and forth along the Oracos Bridge, taking the occasion to look out the forward viewport at the planet's surface. somewhere. He'd been careful about retreating from the Enderon system and with backtracking to the planet on Reinhardt's orders to recover the prototype. But that mission ended in failure. The mobile suit was already missing. He had already sent the report off to Reinhardt and knew that the man wouldn't like the response, but something was tugging at the back of his mind and he couldn't place it. But who was after him right now? The Republic? Or the Gatani? Or Card himself? He couldn't shake the feeling ever since Stefan Card had boarded his ship back at the Hoth system. He was present when Blue Talon entered into its first combat with the pirates he had joined with. Tams was in command of the crew that had handled the first mobile suit, and it still devastated him to see Cap destroy it after the duel between his suit and Blue Talon. It was something he kept inside all of these years. And if the search for him and his 3 ships involved the Gatani, it would certainly involve Card. Any traces yet? He finally asked his quarren crewmen on the scanners. No, sir, and I don't expect to find any, Quaylis said as he sighed, but kept his attention on the scans. With the Empire's cloaking shield, all you had to do was detect it. All you had to do to detect it was notice something would disappear behind it. In some cases, you could pick up the thermal traces on the engines, and most of the other cloaking shields, some of the other powers are the same, but the Gatani have gotten it just about as perfect as it can get. No emissions, no residual traces, nothing. And they can track us clearly through it visually and with their sensors. If they're out there, we're not going to know until they decide to let us. Just keep looking, Tim said as he looked back out the viewport. Find a way. CSS Cure, Katani Hakana class bird of prey. He's gone to active scanning, Captain Jonathan Reitman heard off to his right. Again? His executive officer asked as he stood at the same station. That's the 4th time in 30 minutes. You'd think the captain was bored. Or being extremely cautious, Reitman said softly as he leaned back in the captain's chair. Tactical, make sure our cloak is still running smoothly. Reitman knew it was an unnecessary command as his ship's cloaking system was programmed to run self-diagnostics often. Cure was state-of-the-art, a joint venture between Catan's shipbuilding industry and the New Republic. She and her sister ships, which included the New Republic's Nightcaller, were originally designed for recon and special ops but eventually turned into a multi-tool of a ship. She was, basically, an elliptical disc with her engines housed in extensions a third of the way back from the rear. Her size was larger than the old Corellian Action Force series, but smaller than a Carrot-class cruiser. Faster and more maneuverable than any crewed ship in the galaxy. Only snub fighters could outdo her, and her armor and shields made her hard to damage if they were hit. Her stealth systems and cloaking devices were a more advanced version derived from Nib Cadre's designs. Cure was able to enter and exit from hyperspace completely undetected. Designed to deploy to special operations teams and perform electronic and visual surveillance, as well as hold a flight of fighters for special ops, she could operate without notice. If threatened, her weapon systems could hold an old Imperial Star Destroyer at bay. In that regard, the designer turned to Stefan Card and Blue Talon. Cure's main batteries were derived from the mobile suit's main weapon, powered down but still powerful enough to punch through capital ship-grade shields with a magazine of proton torpedoes and beradium torpedoes to augment it. Everything was powered by dual power cores that generated enough energy one could easily support the entire ship if the other failed. It all came at a heavy cost in design and construction, resulting in only a few ships in the class, but it was well worth the cost. Kuroda, Reitman said as he looked over at his scanning officer, keep tabs on those 3. We need to know when they move. Aye, sir. Signals, he said as he looked over to the next station. Contact Valkyrie and let Captain Payne know that we've located the group. Einar shut off the offensive systems and transferred all power to the hyperdrive. He wanted out of here and back to Catan where they would be safe. He keyed in a secure channel over to Ari's ship. Everyone all right? We're fine over here, Einar. Thanks. We owe you, Ari responded after a few seconds. The ship took some damage, but we'll make it back to Catan just as long as we don't run into more people who want to take a shot at us. We're going to take one more look around Onderon. Get those hollows sent to Maxell and come back for us at 1900 hours. Don't jinx it, Master. I'll take care of you. The Viking is still in one piece, he said, patting the controls. We'll get this sample of yours back to Catan. Then we'll decide what to do with it, Ari answered him. Catan will have to do. My labs have been compromised on Coruscant, Ari thought to herself bitterly, and the thought of leaving Kate alone hurt Einar more than he cared to admit over the comm. Einar, she'll be all right. She's strong, Ari said, picking up on his thoughts. Didn't I tell you some time ago to stay out of my mind? He told her with a laugh. Hey, I can't help it if you're lovesick, Einar, and it's normal to be worried under these Ari's air left her lungs as both ships shuddered violently as they were pulled out of hyperspace. Alarms blared in his cockpit, signaling incoming vessels, and one big one. Oh no, not again. Why do I always run into the interdictors? He yelled, slamming the panel in front of him with his fist. Ari, can you hear me? He only received static. They were jamming his transmissions. Cispon! The computer showed incoming fighters on an intercept course for his ship and Ari's. She can't hold out against this. He brought his sublight engines to the maximum and powered his weapons. XJ fighters filled his screens, acquiring target locks on him, and within seconds, proton torpedoes raced towards his ship. Einar took evasive maneuvers, bringing the ship into a stomach-lurching roll, evading most of the shots, but 3 hit their mark, sending sparks all over the cockpit as the shields started to fail. He bit his lower lip and saw Ari's transport flying past, evading most of the shots and answering back with laser fire, but mostly she was on the receiving end of the fight. Einar, we need to get this sample out of here. That's what counts. Get those hollows to Maxwell, he heard Ari yell through the force. Or was that his brain's comprehension of the feelings and images she sent? Oh, don't worry, Master. You'll get out of here soon, he sent back, sending her an image of her ship escaping to hyperspace. You're forgetting that interdictor, Einar. We'll never be able to take it out. Einar swallowed hard, and then went back to targeting one of the fighters and firing. Leave that to me. Once more, you old girl, he said, patting the bulkhead as he laid in a new course. Straight to the interdictor's gravity well generator. Computer, all power to front shields and sublight engines. The ship lurched as the power was transferred, moving the ship dangerously fast towards the larger vessel. I have a bad feeling about this, he said, before locking in the course, and then he ran to the back, straight for the escape pod. He reached the pod and jumped in before sealing it behind him. The world spun as the small vessel lurched out of control, leaving the Viking on a collision course with the interdictor. He watched as his ship raced through space, the X-Wings all trying to stop them, before fire erupted and explosions rocked the ship, but it kept going. 3, 2, 1. The light blinded him as the ship crashed into the interdictor. A chain reaction of explosions followed, and tendrils of fire and smoke erupted from all over. Einar, we're coming to pick you up, you crazy nerf herder. Einar tried to steady himself in the pod and glanced at the readings. They were too far away. They would never get to him in time. Their ship was barely functional. Negative. You don't have the time, and you know it. I'll live. I'll get out of this and meet you back on Catan where I can just go. Einar could feel Ari's hesitation, but she was a military officer and she knew what she had to do. The transport jumped to hyperspace before the fighters caught up with them. Force be with you, my friend. We'll see you at 1900 tonight on Enderon. Einar sighed as he felt a tractor beam lock onto his escape pod. Come on, Chris, Jade said as she set down the 2 plates of lunch on the counter for her and Chris Tianjin. You've been staring at that datapad for a long time. Chris smiled and set it down as she looked over to what Jade had prepared, before smiling at her host. I've only tried Katani cuisine once or twice, here each time, and never enjoyed anything better. Sometimes the best things are the simple ones, Jade said as she poured them both a glass of water. And I kept it very simple today. I can't stand what some of the galactic elite charge and pay for stuff that isn't half as good as what comes out of my kitchen. That got a laugh out of Christiane as she scrolled down to look over some things on her datapad. Stop that, Jade said, pointing her fork at the other woman. Just enjoy the meal. Yes, my lady. And Chris chuckled again. How long did Stefan say he was going to be out? He said he was going to ride to Adon. I hope he knows that Jamison was going to ride there to meet him. Ah, Chris said as she took a bite of her meal. How are things with Andrea and Edward? Happier than I've ever seen them, Jade said as she leaned back slightly. They're going down for the festival. I think Rhaenys went with them to enjoy the music. And Dylan? Settling in with his duties on Cabrera. Got an ad coming up in about we got an ad coming up. I'm sorry. I will pause there until our ad break is done. I am trying to not read through the ads for you guys. So we got about a minute left on our ad. Alright. And I do apologize if things are confusing. As I mentioned previously, the stories do tend to overlap a little bit, so there will be a little bit of backing and forthing in the story. So for that, I do apologize. Alright, everybody is back. Alright. So I paused while we're on ad break, so I will pick back up. Trying to keep that in mind. You should be able to see the ad break notifications in chat. Hopefully that's actually working. Alright. Cabrera. I'll have to send Mother some of this fruit and let her try it, the young man thought as he paid the shopkeeper of one of the local fruit stands and walked down before taking a bite of his small meal. A bit sweeter than what he was used to on Catan, but it was good. Dylan Card had gotten his post helping the local watchman, a Twilight that had become a Jedi Knight only a few years before him, so they were good friends. It hadn't taken him long to figure his way around, and he had eventually taken to getting several articles of local clothing to help him blend in and help people be more comfortable with having the Jedi around. His robes he kept at his lodging for when he needed to attend in an official capacity. I remember Valen talking about how his great-great-grandfather from the Clone Wars would do the same thing on Corellia, he thought as he walked down the street, and his wife always referring to it as his hunting clothes. He looked at the rising sun. It looks like it'll be a good day. How many? Tams asked as he looked down at the Cabrera from orbit. Still 2 shuttles on the surface, his exec told him from the lower deck. Captain, you're sure giving everyone a case of nerves. If they've seen what I've seen, they'd feel the same, Tam said. Contact them again. We need to pull out as fast as we can. Sir. A junior officer saluted after she handed Maxwell the latest search report. Valkyrie's battle group has them spotted at Cabrera, he said to Colonel Turner as he handed him the dispatch. Damn, those Katani don't waste any time when it comes to a hard target search, Turner said as he looked up at the galactic map. Payne made direct contact? They've got one of their new hunters in the system and it picked them up, Maxwell said as he pulled up the list of the ships in Mather Payne's second fleet. The Cure, one of their Harkonna-class birds of prey. Nice, Turner said as he looked over the position of the closest Republic group. We can get Harkness and her escort into position. Any word from the general yet? No word since they left Bothaway. Catan. Card home. Stefan, are you still awake? Jade asked as she came into the study with her nightgown and an overcloak on. I couldn't sleep just yet, so I decided to do some late reading, Stefan said with a smile as he put down his book. What's wrong? There's a call that came in. I thought you'd want to get it. Okay, he said as he keyed the comm unit built into his desk. Odura Oden. Well, this is a surprise. I'm sorry to disturb you, my friend, the Ishitib Jedi said on the other end of the transmission, but it's important. The young Jedi that was supposed to arrive here in the Tanab system never arrived. I'm concerned. How long ago was he supposed to have arrived? Stefan asked as he leaned forward. He should have been here a few days ago, but I've not seen him or felt his presence here. His name was Falk. Falk? Missing? The news was something that chilled the Katani Jedi Master when he heard it. I'll see what I can track down, Odura. Thank you. I'll contact you later. I've seen that look before, Jade said as she walked around the desk while he was terminating the call. What's wrong? Falk. That was Walt's younger brother, Stefan said softly. He went through the academy about the same time that Dylan started his training. We assigned him to help Odan as a watchman. He's disappeared. Oh, gods, Jade said softly. Einar slowly woke up in a cold cell. The after effects of the stun grenade, yes, that's what it was. A stun grenade shot into the escape pod. Einar jumped to his feet and his eyes slowly scanned the room before he stretched his senses forward and his hand dropped to his lightsaber. Well, at least they were smart, he said to himself as he tried his pockets, all empty. His hands reached for his necklace, the one with his wife's picture. Oh, no, they didn't. He tried to look around for some kind of weapon, but there was not much. A bench, made out of duracrete, nothing handy. There wasn't a door anywhere, just a gray cell. Einar extended his right hand and summoned the Force, a tingling sensation rushing through his hands, up his arms, and into his very being. A ball of glowing white Force energy formed in front of him before he started shaking, the awesome power engulfing him. Then it stopped. Einar blinked in surprise. What? Someone, or something, had somehow taken the Force away from him. His senses were lost. He couldn't tap into the current. Who are you? He yelled at no one in particular. Don't you remember me, old friend? A voice boomed from a hidden speaker. Einar spun around, ready in a self-defense stance, but there was no one there. Well, I've met a lot of people, Einar responded. He tried again to tap into the Force, but without success. Don't even bother. I've cut you off, Jedi. No one has that power over Jedi Master. You... Einar smiled and laughed. You brought it to Samari, didn't you? There was no answer. Yes, that's it, isn't it? Trying to frighten me with your awesome power. I didn't give you Bothans enough credit, Einar said as he sat down and tried to relax. The voice over the speakers laughed, but it wasn't any kind of funny. You're not a Bothan, are you? Einar asked, feeling a bit nervous all of a sudden. No. Einar looked up and saw a man standing before him, and a door opened slowly in the wall, guards to either side. It took a moment for the face to register. The man had changed so much over the years. Einar's eyes widened in shock, and his hand dropped to where his lightsaber should have been, but it still wasn't there. Bane. Two powerful sets of arms took hold of him and pulled him back against the wall as the Dark Lord walked into the room, pulling his hood off his head. Yes, he hissed as he outstretched his hand and regarded Einar's face. Still the same Einar I remember, stubborn as ever. You and Card were so much alike. What do you want, Sith? Einar said as he tried to fight against the two who held him. At the moment, your attention, Bane said as he showed an evil smile, which I will have right now because you're going to deliver a message after I'm done with you. He nodded to the two warriors that held him. Take him away. Catan, the Card home. Christy and Jen walked through the woods outside of Stefan's home, reaching the entrance to an old monastery on Mount Adan. Going through the arched doorway, she felt the energy of the old stone buildings. She could tell why Stefan had chosen this place to begin his idea of a new training hall for Jedi. She found him in one of the courtyards of the grounds. Stones had been placed in patterns on the grass, and as she looked at the pattern, she could tell it was the same as was in Stefan's training circle at his home, which was known on Catan as the Master's Wheel. It was used for the basics of the Katani fighting style. And at the moment, Stefan was in the center of the circle, going through a combination of slow and quick motions and strikes with a staff. He was only in his trousers and boots, with his inner kimono on as he continued the kata, his eyes closed. She watched the motions and nodded with the energy he was drawing as he practiced. Stefan was considered by many to be one of the more accomplished martialists of the order, not something he boasted on or took pride in, but kept it tempered with his training as a Jedi. Stefan stopped his kata and held the final pose, his eyes still closed. Any news, Chris? There were no records, Christiane said as she handed over the datapad. Stefan slowly set down the staff and toweled his head off before he took it and looked it over. No sign of him showing up at all on Tanab, and we can't spare the people to check the other stops. Spast! I don't know what could have happened, Christiane said as Stefan handed her the pad back and started to put his outer robes back on. But we're still trying to reorganize here and on Chandrila after Ari's warning for the Jedi to evacuate Coruscant. With Carlela pushing his sentiment against us in the Senate, we really didn't have much of a choice but to relocate all of our resources. But there is something I'm finding hard to imagine in all of this, though. What's that? Stefan asked as he picked up the staff and started walking towards the house. If Falk had died, we would have felt his passing, but in meditation last night I couldn't even feel his presence in the Force, as if someone was blocking him in a way. Stefan paused in his tracks and thought over that. Blocking access to the Force? Other than using Eosamiri, a technique that only few among us can master. What are you saying, Stefan? We've all noticed through the years that the numbers of Sith have been growing because of the many encounters we've been having, Stefan said as he thought about it. They are no longer staying to the principle of only two, master and apprentice. I'm wondering if there's more to this than that we're not seeing yet. What if they're massing? Also, if I sound a little congested, I apologize. I have a tiny bit of con card still. Nothing major, just a cold. But it's all up here, so if I sound a bit odd, that would be why. Alright, and just one little bit at the end of this chapter. Amrond. Yes, my master, the Sith warrior said as he bowed before the image of his master. How goes your search? I have convinced the boy to my tutelage, Amrond said quietly. He has begun to understand the reasoning of his brother. I believe he will be a most valuable asset. Then bring him here to continue with the others, Bane said as he looked at Amrond. Plans to transfer the captured mobile suit to the Bothans are about to proceed, and we will release our captured quarry when you return. By your command, my master. Chapter 2. Einar moaned as he opened his eyes. His whole body ached from the beating the two Goonies had put him through earlier. Without the aid of the Force, he was completely defenseless. His martial arts were of no use when two thugs attacked him in a closed space. He rose up carefully on his elbows and took a deep breath, which stung as his broken ribs grated against his lungs. Blessed Sisbon. His lips were swollen, and he felt the blood crusting on his face. His robes were stained with sweat and blood. He stood up carefully and removed his outer tunic. How the heck was he supposed to get out of this one? He tried drawing on the Force, but nothing happened. Somehow, either by some dark side art or Yosemite, he was hoping for the second. If Bane had grown powerful enough to block someone's use of the Force, there was no Jedi that could stop him. Einar remembered hearing about the Jedi of the Old Republic, that selected members of the Council back then knew a technique to strip someone of the Force, something to do with killing the midichlorians or stopping their ability to communicate with their host. He was afraid to find out what else Bane had learned. But there was an upside to all this. If Einar couldn't feel the Force, then Bane couldn't infiltrate Einar's mind with the Force either. He needed a plan. He needed to escape. His grip on his tunic tightened as he looked around the room again for some kind of weapon, but still, the only thing in the room was the bench, built out from the wall. The bench. He walked over to it and went down on one knee. There was a leg holding it up, also made out of duracrete. If only he could break it from under the bench, but how? He tried to hit it with the butt of his hand and cringed in pain. No, not like that. There was no way to even budge the thing. Duracrete was built to last. He stood up again and walked over to the far wall, focusing on it before he sighed heavily. He felt like a lab rat. He slowly loosened his grip on the tunic in his hand, and it almost fell out of his hand before he closed his grip on it again. I've got to go with what I have, he said to himself as he started winding the tunic into a makeshift rope. He remembered where the door was supposed to be, and he walked over to it and started banging on the surface. Hey you! I need to use the fresher! He banged on the door repeatedly until a hiss could be heard, and the door swung open, a large human standing there with a blaster. Don't make any sudden moves, Jedi. Einar eyed him sarcastically, and then, with a snap, hurled the tunic in the direction of the blaster, knocking it out of the man's hand as a blaster bolt went off. Einar snapped the tunic back with his right hand, slapping the man in the face, and grabbed the blaster with his left hand, leveling it at the guard, the look of shock on the guard's face bringing a grin to Einar's. He switched the blaster to stun and shot the guard's limp form falling to the floor. Einar slowly took off with the newly acquired blaster and headed down the hallway before meeting a trio of guards. Who needs the Force anyway? He entered the small security office at the end of the hall and looked around. Computer screens lined the walls, security cameras, readouts of all sorts. Security cameras showing Bane talking to someone via hypercom. He couldn't make out the form, though. Einar walked over to the panels and adjusted the volume so he could hear what they were saying. Bring him here to continue with the others. Plan to transfer the captured mobile suit to the Bothans or to proceed, and we will release our captured quarry when we return. This was the same conversation that had happened a few moments before. Then, everything went dark again, and the last thing Einar saw was the angry expression of a dark-haired Bothan standing over him with a blaster. CSS Valkyrie. Status report? Captain Mather Payne asked as he walked into Valkyrie's bridge. Kira is holding station over the group, his exec said from the navigational plot at the rear of the room. Kira's position along with the 3 ships under Cham's command in the Kira's position along with the 3 other ships under Cham's command in the Calbrea system. She's been giving us constant updates, but Tam seems to be keeping his ships together for the moment. Payne nodded slightly as he looked over the tactical plot. He had already figured his battle group's route into the system to get the jump on Tams. Have you heard from the New Republic group yet? The commander of the detachment from 3rd Fleet is in position on the opposite side of the system from our location, his exec told him as he pointed it out on the plot. It'll just take a microjump for both our groups to be in position and take them. Flight ops? I've got Blackhawk and Scimitar Squadron standing by, his flight controller called from his console. Tactical. All batteries manned and ready, all tubes loaded and armed, his tactical officer called from the station. Shields are ready to be brought up at a moment's notice. Very well, Payne said as he looked across the bridge through one of the forward viewports. Signal clear to assume battle stations. Feed coordinates to the helm and prepare for the jump. Colonel, Major, I think you better see this. Maxwell slowly walked over to the station and looked at the plot. Jeff, Valkyrie's prepping for the takedown. Is Harkness in position yet? Turner asked as he read the dispatch. The plan was for our group to act as backup, Maxwell said to him. The Katani have the advantage of not having to keep forces patrolling the entire New Republic, so Payne was able to bring in his entire battle group for the search. Alright, advise our people for standby action. Something doesn't feel right, Tham said softly as he looked from left to right out the forward viewports. Exec, signal the other ships to defensive pattern A and call battle stations. It's too quiet, and I know they're coming. Aye, sir. And where the spast are those crews that were on the surface? Captain, Kira's tactical officer called out as he started bringing up a new scanning grid. Better take a look at this. What do you got, Laren? Reitman asked as he leaned against the console. Changed in position, Cap, Laren said as he enhanced the grid. They've gone from single line to a triangular configuration with Oroco at the point. Wait, their shields just went up and weapons are coming online. Hangars? They haven't launched anything yet, but even if they have some of those labor suits on board, modified for combat or not, our weapons will be able to take them out easy. Signals, I need you to get a hold of Valkyrie and update them. No can do, sir, the comm technician said from his station. We just got word from them that they were about to jump. That means they just did, the exec said from where he was standing. Battle stations, Reitman said as he went back to the command chair. Tactical, let's get ready to strike the nearest ship if they decide to make a fight out of it. Kate paced across the room in their apartment back on Coruscant as she waited for her line to connect. The cards were quite difficult to reach. She placed her hand on her stomach and smiled. It was starting to show. She'd better buy some new clothes soon. And then the line cut in and the lovely face of Lady Jade appeared on the screen. Kate, darling, how are you? Kate took a seat by the comm unit. I'm fine. I'm just a bit worried, that's all. Jade grinned. The price we pay for marrying Jedi. Kate smiled, but she could feel that something was wrong. I know, the odd hours, cuts, bruises, she smiled back at Jade, but one thing Einar does is check in. The only times he doesn't is when he's undercover, and from what I heard, he was going for a quick mission with Ari, and I can't reach him. I can't reach her either. Jade listened intently and nodded. Well, now that you mention it, we haven't received any word from General Din either. Stefan isn't in town right now, but I'll ask him when he returns. Is that all right? Kate nodded. Thank you. Yes. And Kate, don't worry. I bet he's totally fine. Sisbon, Einar growled as he opened his eyes and rubbed the back of his head with his hand. He was back in his cell, alone. So much for that plan. I knew someone once. Quite as stubborn as you are, Master Algernon, Bane's voice said annoyingly over the comm system. You remind me of Master Card. You know that? Always sticking your noses in where they don't belong. I'm sorry to be an inconvenience to you, Bane, Einar shouted back. My allegiance is to the New Republic, to the Jedi Order, so don't act so surprised that we're standing up against people like you. People like me? Oh, Master Algernon, you've never met anyone quite like me. How long ago? Stefan asked after Jade spoke with him in the living room about Kate's call. For a few days, Jade told him. And the feeling I got from Kate is the same as when I used to worry for you on some of your more dangerous missions. And I would have heard back from him, too, Stefan said softly as he walked around the couch. I hate having to break Rhenius and Catherine's trip to Kingston, but I may have to go out. I know, Jade said softly, but I'm leaving it to you to tell them. You owe them that. Stefan smiled and nodded as she went to see what the two young people were up to as he went into his study and activated the comm. Operations, the New Republic officer announced on the other end. This is Jedi Master Stefan Card, Stefan told him. I need to speak with Major Maxwell. Sir, he's in the situation room at the... Son, I know he's busy with the search, Stefan interrupted. This is just as important a matter. So, if you please. Yes, sir. Stefan waited a few moments, watching the holding image until Maxwell's image came up. You sure have a way with my junior officers, Master Card, he said, getting a slight smile from Stefan. What's the matter? Major, do you have Ari's last flight plan on file for her return trip? No, since it was classified, she didn't file it, Maxwell said, suddenly putting the pieces together. And she's not reported in yet, either. Master Algernon is missing as well, Stefan said as he thought about it, and I'm sensing something sinister at work. Unfortunately, I don't have anything available in the way of resources to divert for a search, Stefan, the Major told him. I understand. I'll start a search with Blue Talon then, Stefan said as he thanked him and cut the channel. Well, better tell the children that I'm not going to be able to go with them on that trip. Bane sat in his chair on the observation deck watching the swirling mass of hyperspace. The dark side surrounded him as he bathed in its power in the Force, looking through time and space through the tides of the Force itself. He saw a planet, brown and green against the blackness of space, and he saw swarms of black and white fighting like a war of good and evil, and then some symbol, eerily blue with a silver core, stepped into the middle of the symbolic war, and things grew bright as all the pieces fell into place again. The war was over. Bane opened his eyes and smiled. So, there you're going, my old friend. He punched in a few commands into his armrest, and a few minutes passed until the form of Amron appeared in front of him again. What is it, my master? Bane stood up, and he paced. I have just seen a vision in the Force. It showed me where we're headed next. Amron nodded, his hands behind his back, in a gesture of submission and attention. Where is that, my master? The Calbrea system. It's the perfect spot to let our little friend go and start the next phase of our plan, Bane added as he sat down again. Why Calbrea? Amron asked, tilting his head like a curious bantha. Bane grinned and leaned forward, gripping the chair's arms and digging his nails into the rare Alderaanian wood. Stefan Card will be arriving there. Einar woke with a start as an explosion rocked the ship. He climbed carefully to his feet and braced himself against the wall. What's going on? The door to his cell slid open and a large Bothan entered, leveling a blaster at him. Come with me. We're transferring you to another cell. Master Bane feels you are too valuable to die here. Einar raised an eyebrow and looked at him. Die? What's going on, furball? Radiation leak. Faulty generator. Now, come on before your hair falls out, Jedi scum, the Bothan said, waving the blaster in the direction of the door. Einar nodded and drew his cloak around him as he walked towards the door and into the hall, the guard behind him. Only one guard? He walked slowly and carefully down the hall, glancing back. The dark-haired Bothan was still there with the blaster pointed at his back. As they reached a corner, Einar ran past it and as the little furball came after him, he kicked the blaster from his hand and knocked him out with a hard left hook. He carefully picked up the blaster and looked around suspiciously. Then he took off. There was no logic in wasting a good opportunity. He sprinted down the hall and into the lift at the end. He had to get out of here now. As the lift ascended towards the shuttle, Einar felt the wind knocked out of him, and he fell to his knees as the Force returned. He stood up carefully. It was like a reunion with a long-lost friend. He felt hot and cold at the same time as every fiber in his being tingled. The lift stopped, and Einar carefully stepped out with the aid of the Force, appearing like a blur as he moved past the guards and the workers, blaster fire erupting after him and exploding on the walls as he passed. It wasn't any good exhausting himself. Einar looked around the shuttle bay carefully. Nobody was around. This is too easy. He ran towards the nearest snub fighter and jumped into the cockpit, closing the canopy. It took him a few moments to go through the pre-flight, just in time before the guards arrived, firing madly at the fighter, which the shields deflected the blaster bolts. Like I said, too easy. I bet the bay doors aren't sealed either. Good evening, Desnipa, Welcome in. Like I said, too easy. I bet the bay doors aren't sealed either. Anar pushed the button to open up the cockpit doors for departure, or the hangar doors for departure. The doors slid open and revealed a planet rotating in space below them. Oh, and we are an ad break, and I will stop. Okay, got a minute left on this ad break, so I'm going to take the opportunity to get a drink of water. Hope you're having a good evening, Disneyba. Thank you for joining us tonight. Alright. Not sure how far we'll get. I had originally planned to get through 4 chapters of this, but we will see. We're about halfway through chapter 2. So, we'll see. Good. Alright. And we're back. Thank you for your patience during these ad breaks. They help support the channel, as well as those of you who are subscribed. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate your patience. And thank you for sticking with us. Alright. Anar pushed the button to open the hangar doors for departure. They slid open slowly, revealing a planet rotating below, which the scanners and the some fighter revealed to be Calbrea. He took off, soaring into space, firing his aft lasers blindly in case someone was following him, but not a single fighter followed. Only a few ill-aimed laser shots. Come on, Bane. You think I'm simple? He started for the atmospheric entry and guided the fighter towards the planet below. There was a reason Bane let him escape onto Calbrea, and he needed to find out what that was. But for now, he needed to get into hiding and make sure Bane wasn't following him. He tried to think back to the latest situation reports. Did he know anyone stationed here? Of course. Anar smiled and stretched out with his senses for the young boy. His presence shone brightly in the force, much like his father's. He could contact Stefan as soon as he had a secure channel, and Dylan could help him. Aronko initiated a new formation just after Valkyrie made that micro-jump, the tech said as he finished with the new plot. Kira was already prepared to make a strafing run if they started anything. She decloaked and bore down on the rearward ship just as Payne's group made it into the system. Tam's third ship is out of the fight, reporting heavy damage to their shield generators and engines from Kira's attack. It's holding position, but the other two have retreated to the other side of the planet. Tams will be able to tell when Payne's slingshots around in high orbit. Damn, Maxwell said as he looked over the plot. Where's Harkness? The tech punched in a few commands and a point was highlighted on the other side of the system. Maxwell ran the calculations in his head. Okay, they can come in on that side, but Tams is already going to be ready for a fight. Spast, just what we needed. We wanted to overpower and hopefully get him without firing a shot. How was Tams able to anticipate Valkyrie coming into the system? Turner asked as he looked at the current positions. He wasn't, Maxwell said as he looked over the situation while recalling Stefan Card's and Ari's reports on the captain from back in the health system. Card said he started to sense the beginning of paranoia and felt it stronger in Tams on Enderon, sorry. He's probably been worried about a strike for some time, and I think that gives me an idea of how to defuse this. Stefan settled back into the pilot's seat as Blue Talon kept traveling towards the next destination on autopilot. With the mobile suit settled into its shroud, it would pass as a civilian stock freighter instead of the image that had become parallel to trouble for anyone who was on the wrong side. He'd already checked a few systems along the route, he thought. The route he thought Ari and Einar might have taken to get from Enderon to Coruscant in the shortest amount of time. Each time there were no traces. I'm running out of possibilities here. He reached the next system on the route, and before he could even hail the local spaceport, his comm panel was lighting up with a signal from Coruscant. What in... I apologize for the interruption, Master Card, Major Maxwell said after a crisp salute. I know you're looking for the General, but we've got a delicate situation that came up, and you're the closest one in the area that could possibly negotiate it. You found Tams? Stefan asked as he noticed a data link up coming from Maxwell. Payne's battle group engaged them in the Calbrea system, and we're down to a standstill right now, Master Card. I've got no people nearby that can possibly talk to him and convince him to stand down. After looking over... Yes, thank you. Yes. Are you trying to get me to stretch? I do have a stretch. Thank you for the shout out for Nar. I appreciate you. Yes, he does. He's doing his job. Here we go. Anyway, give me a second. Alright. There we go. Hey, if you want to be real technical, I'm kind of a scrub. I'm a baby streamer, so. But I'm having fun, and that's what matters. Alright. Master Card. I've got no people. I have no people nearby who can possibly talk to him and convince him to stand down. After looking over what you wrote about this man, I feel that you might be the best to talk to him without any further military action. I understand the message, Stefan said softly as he entered the coordinates. I'm getting underway now. Thank you, Master Jedi. Oh, sorry. Are you alright, my lady? Dylan asked as he laid a cool cloth on the girl's forehead. It had been a hectic moment, taking down the men that were attacking her without killing them. His father, Stefan, had taught him the importance of having a powered-down stun setting on his lightsaber, and it came in handy. With her guard and the care of the local medics, he took it upon himself to see about her welfare. For some reason unknown to him, it was what the Force told him. Oh, she said softly as she started opening her eyes. What happened? A couple of thugs wanted some attention from you, Dylan said softly as he helped her sit up. When they took down your guardian, I decided that enough was enough. Where am I? You're in my quarters on Calbrea. She looked around the room, and Dylan could sense a sudden feeling from her. Walking down the street one moment, waking up in a stranger's home the next. How can I trust you, then? She asked, testing for an answer. You may trust me, he said softly. I've got some clothing here if you want to change. Enderon, just after nightfall. Hold, Ari breathed tightly, her left hand raised in a fist to shoulder height, signaling the four-man Special Forces unit behind her to freeze in their tracks. A blaster rifle rested in her right hand, the butt against her hip. Her trigger finger lay along the barrel at the ready. She lifted a pair of night vision goggles to her eyes and surveyed the clearing in front of them. A large transmission tower rose out of the thick underbrush and tree tops in the distance. Lowering the night vision goggles from her face, her eyes adjusted slowly from the luminescent green to the pitch black of the jungle. General, I think that we are in signal range. Transport's hyperdrive is shot. The core is leaking, but I think we can bounce a signal off our plates in that tower over there and out into space, the unit's first sergeant informed her. Good. Get a microburst out to Anar. It's not like him to not respond to my mental messages. He was supposed to pick us up an hour ago. I replied, her face turning in the pale moonlight, revealing camouflage face paint, so only the whites of her eyes glistened in the moonlight. Will do, General, the first sergeant replied. And get one sent to Maxwell. He will want to know if I'm alive, Ari whispered after him. He nodded in reply. Ari turned to the other three in the squad, also in camouflage and face paint, rifles in hand. Drop her gear, set up a picket line. We make camp here, she informed the small band. She turned back to the signal tower that had been designated as the rendezvous point. After the attack in Bothan space, she and her team had broken from the ambush and made space tracks for Enderon to further her inspection of the illegal arms dealing that was occurring between Bothui and Enderon. She had sent Anar to transfer micro-holofilm to Maxwell, hollows of what was being built on Bothui illegally, but he had sacrificed his ship to save her and her team, and she had left him drifting in open space. She only hoped he had made it, gotten into another transport, and was on his way to Enderon to pick her and her team up. Crouching in the brush and weeds, her rifle near her, she broke out a ration bar, began to eat. She pulled the metal sample from her vest and flipped it around in her hand, viewing it from all sides. It was a new type of metal, stronger than titanium. It looked to her as if it were a combination of twin Tiron pulp alloy mixed with titanium, steel, and a fourth metal she didn't recognize. Whatever it was damn near indestructible, she thought to herself. She put the metal shard back into her vest pocket for safekeeping. Where the hell are you, Anar? She thought to herself as she settled in for a long night until Maxwell would send a ship for her team. Anar rode the lift to the 34th floor and stepped out. The night felt warm and still against the skin, but something felt really wrong, like a sensation of aggression in the force hanging over his head. He walked to the door at the end of the hall and stopped for a moment to let his senses expand outwards. There were two people in the room. No aggression. He knocked on the door and waited. The door opened slowly with a creak and a familiar face peeked out, and then broke into a smile before they pulled the door open. Master, what in the force are you doing here? Anar smiled at the young man and entered the Spartan apartment behind him. Oh, I was in the neighborhood. I decided to drop in. Dylan scurried around, picking up data pads and offering Anar a seat. I need to contact your father, actually. We have an important matter to discuss. Dylan nodded. Of course, Master. I'll try to reach him for you. Until then, help yourself to anything at all. I have food and... Whoops. His voice faded out as a scantily clad woman stepped out of the fresher, covered only in a towel. The young woman froze in her tracks, and Anar looked up at Dylan, smiling, and quickly said the first thing that came to mind. Don't let me interrupt. Dylan turned bright red. No, it's not that. I'm just letting her clean up. She was attacked earlier. The woman stood there, quite unsure of what was happening, especially with a new stranger in the room and only a towel covering her. Anar stood and looked at them both. Well, for now, I suggest your lady friend get dressed, and then we'll discuss this attack you mentioned further. Have you reported this to the Jedi Council or the local authorities? Anar could feel the sudden sense of awe coming from the young woman when he mentioned the Jedi and saw her eyeing young Dylan in a way he remembered his wife doing years back, and grinned. "No, Master, we just arrived here a few moments ago. I was going to file the report after I'd seen that she was all right." Aenor sat down again and, without realizing it, started playing with his beard, a nervous habit. "Don't contact anyone yet. Something doesn't quite feel right about any of this." Dylan looked at him. "Any what, Master?" Aenor snapped back to the present. "I'll explain later. Now, if your friend here is done, I'd like to use the refresher, if I may. I'm afraid that after a week in that cell, I'm not as fresh as I'd like." The young woman smiled sheepishly and turned into an adjoining room to get dressed, Dylan shaking his head before he sat down. "Of course, but when you're done, I deserve to hear the whole story." Dylan just stood there after Aenor closed the door, with Kara stepping out of the other room a few moments later. He was starting to feel his cheeks flush from not having been able to let her know that she had been rescued by a Jedi. He started to say before she gave him a smile. "It's okay. We really didn't have time to introduce ourselves," she said as she sat down. "But I didn't know I'd ever meet a Jedi, much less thank one for saving me." Dylan laughed softly as he sat down next to her. "Now, I just don't know where to start." "How about with an introduction?" she said as she hugged him carefully. "Thank you for earlier, by the way. My name's Kara. Kara Rita." "Rita?" Dylan asked all of a sudden. "The concert they were holding last night?" "My sister," Kara said, lowering her head a little. "We decided to leave ahead of schedule, and I got left to find a liner to head home to Commodore when the group of spacers appeared." Dylan said as he nodded softly. "Did you use—" "No," he said softly, and then quickly added, "not to kill them. I knocked them out. My father always says that to use the lightsaber to kill should only be the last resort." "Your father?" "Oh, my apologies," Dylan said as he blushed a little. "I'm Dylan. Dylan Card. Card as in—" "Yeah," he said, not helping the grin on his face. "The same." "Single craft entering the system," Quillis announced from the center station, getting Tam's attention. "It's headed right for us. Get a visual if you can," Tam said as he started pacing the foredeck of the bridge. "Configuration? The IFF reads as a freighter, but the drive signature is unusual. One person on board." Tams looked out the viewport, looking over the enhanced image, and tried to make out the lines. "It's still heading this way," Quilla said in his bland tone. "Sir, I've got a battery locked on now," the exec said as he walked up. "Not yet," Tam said, getting a feeling from the situation. "Communications, get me a channel to that freighter." "Sir?" "You heard me." There was silence over the speakers, then some static, but the voice that eventually came through didn't surprise him. "Camera shy, Captain?" "Will he never be out of my memories?" Tams asked himself as he lowered his head a notch. "What do you want, Card? You already have us pinned." "I came here to talk, Tams," Stefan said on the other end of the line. "I know you well enough to know that you don't want a battle." He caught the exec hand signaling to the man at the tactical station and cut him off from ordering to fire. "I won't spend another few years in a penal colony." "You don't have to," he heard the Jedi say. "I want a peaceful solution just like you do. Let me land and talk. You can even have all your guards there with blasters trained on me if you want." He thought about it, ignoring the look he was getting from his exec before he finally looked back. "Clear the hangar of all personnel. I'll meet him alone." "Sir, I must protest. We don't—" "Follow my orders or get put in the brig," Tam said sternly. He's never broken his word. Maxwell and Turner were taking a break from the situation room when the young officer came in with the dispatch. "They've stood down," Maxwell said as he handed the datapad to Turner and breathed a sigh of relief. Stefan was breathing easier himself as he flew Blue Talon into Valkyrie's aft hangar, and it was evident that he wasn't the only one when he entered the bridge to the sound of applause from everyone there as officers and technicians stood from their stations. "I wish they wouldn't do that," he quietly said to Captain Payne as he walked up to the command deck. "It's only my duty and responsibility." "It's out of respect, Master Card," Payne said with a smile. "We may like battle, but the boys and girls like even better when we don't have to fire so they can return home later." "Aye," Stefan said, with a nod to the captain and crew. "One less to worry about." "Excuse me, sirs," the comms officer said from his station. "Master Card, you have a transmission coming in." Payne nodded softly, and Stefan activated a private screen on the command deck. "Einar," he blurted out, catching looks from some of the junior techs on the bridge. "Where in the—" "Not on an open channel, please," Einar said quietly, holding up a hand to forestall Stefan's questioning. "I'm at Dylan's apartment on the surface. How fast can you get here?" "I'm on the way." "Nar, are you trying to..." Was I slouching again? Oh. You know, there are other things that you can redeem rather than just posture check. Alright. Alright. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Before I start Chapter 3, I just want to apologize for the somewhat clunky reading, or writing. As I said, not all of this is my work. A lot of it was collaboratively written, and some people write different than I do, so it might feel a little bit rough or clunky, so I apologize for that. So I'm going to read through Chapter 3. Well, actually, you know what? Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Let's read Chapter 3. Chapter 3. 2 days had passed with no word from Einar. Maxwell had been contacted by Ari's men and was sending a shuttle to Underworld to pick her and her team up. With a heavy sigh, Ari instructed her men to clean out the damaged transport so as not to leave a single strand of evidence that a New Republic strike team had been on Underrun. "Move out. I want to reach the ridge before the shuttle enters the atmosphere," Ari said as her men strapped their gear on and began the long trek up the mountain to the rendezvous point. Dylan opened the door for his father, and they hugged for a brief moment before Stefan continued inside to meet up with Einar and gripped his arm in the warrior's grip. "I'm glad to see you're unhurt, my friend," Stefan said before he let go of Einar's arm and looked around the apartment. "We have a lot to talk about, I think. First..." He then looked over to Dylan and Kara sitting on the sofa. "A guest, son?" "Something like that," Dylan said sheepishly. "I'll explain it later." He walked over to Kara and bowed. "Nice to meet you. My name is Stefan Card." Kara seemed to blush, but extended her hand and smiled. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Card, or should I call you Master Jedi?" Stefan grinned and shook his head. "No, my dear, Stefan will do fine." Kara seemed to loosen up a bit and took a seat at the dinner table. Stefan pulled his robe around himself and walked over to the far window. "Einar, can you fill me in on what happened to you and Ari, and where is she anyway?" Einar slowly walked over to the window and leaned against the wall next to it. "Enderon, hopefully." Stefan raised an eyebrow and grinned back. "Hopefully?" "Yeah, well, we kinda got parted." got separated on the way. We were on our way back when the Bothans intercepted us. She's got a sample we need to analyze that could tell us something about their mobile suits. Stefan put up a hand. What? The Bothans intercepted you? Anar laughed. Well, wait, it gets better. This caused Stefan to chuckle slightly. Well, long story short, I had to run the Viking into an interdictor and escape in a life pod so Ari's ship could escape with a sample. If I could have escaped, I was supposed to meet her on Onderon almost 3 days ago. Kinda hard traveling to Enderon in an escape pod, don't you think? Stefan asked, bringing a laugh from Dylan, who was enjoying the story. Well, I didn't get far. The interdictor picked me up when I got thrown in a cell and beat up by some thugs, a mixture of humans and Bothans, Anar added, then moved over to take a seat. How? Stefan asked, clearly intrigued by the whole ordeal. I couldn't feel the force. First I thought it was Yosemite, but I'm not sure. So there was someone calling the shots, someone force sensitive? Anar nodded, and in that habit that of his started fiddling with his beard again. You're not gonna like it. Stefan leaned forward. Try me. Bane. The name seemed to float in the room for a minute as no one spoke. Kara seemed to sink into the soft cushions, not grasping the seriousness of the discussion, but Dylan reached out to her and took her hand and helped her relax. Stefan got to his feet and paced around. You're right. I don't like it. I told you. Well, anyway, after talking to Bane and staying in that cell for another day, I attempted to break out. It didn't work, but I did overhear a conversation Bane was having with someone else about transferring a captured suit to the Bothans. Stefan turned around swiftly, and Anar could feel the anger inside his friend. He's in league with the Bothans. Anar nodded. But to what extent? I don't know yet. But this might help, he said as he pulled off his left boot and removed a fake sole, then handed Stefan a small item the size of a human tooth. Stefan looked puzzled. What's that? Holo recordings from Ari, back from our mission. Stefan grabbed the item and studied it. We'd better get this decrypted, but he stopped a moment and looked at Anar, who was busy putting his boots back on. How did you even escape? Anar leaned back on the sofa and looked at his old friend. He let me escape, and let me tell you, it is no coincidence that he let me off here. Anar left the room where Stefan, Dylan, and Kara were talking and getting to know each other. He needed to place a few calls. He then walked over to the comm station and sat down. The first thing to do was contact Ari. He punched in the coordinates for Enderon and tried to contact her beacon. After a few relentless calls, her tired camouflage face appeared on the monitor. First irritated, and then it turned into one big smile. Anar! Hello, Master, he responded and smiled. Where in the blazes are you? We've been waiting for you on this rock for days. The ship's too badly damaged to enter hyperspace. I'm sorry, but I got detained by an old friend. Bane was on that interdictor. Ari's face froze on the monitor, and for a second, Anar thought that there was lag in the transmission. Bane, are you sure? She asked. Anar said nothing but nodded. I've informed Stefan, and he will tell the council of my findings. I overheard Bane saying that he was going to give a suit over to the Bothans, so we have quite a mystery on our hands. So it seems. We must investigate this at once, Ari responded, the familiar fire burning in her eyes. We will, Master. Now I think I can bully Stefan into lending me his craft so I can come pick you up and your men up. Ari shook her head. There will be no need for that. I contacted Maxwell a couple of days ago, and he's sending a shuttle that will be here in a few hours, but thank you. All right, I'll meet you back on Catan when all this is over. May the Force be with you. I'll be heading back to Coruscant first, my friend. I've got troops to debrief, but I will be in contact with you shortly, Ari continued. He cut the channel and stood up before walking back into the living room again. Stefan, we need to talk. Her boots clicked along the steel grating that covered the deck as she moved down the corridor. General, good to have you back aboard, Maxwell said, quickly falling into a step beside her as they moved down the corridor of her flagship, the Thoris Sounder. No time for the formalities, Colonel. Set course for Corellia. I need to speak with General Sybil about a possible new military weapon. Ari briefed her advisor as she headed to the bridge. Then we shall return to Coruscant. I need to... Whoops. I will stop there. There's an ad break. Sorry, guys. I'll take an opportunity to get a drink of water. Alright. Okay. Alright. I am trying to not read during the ad breaks so that people don't miss stuff. We have 15 seconds left on the ad. Okay. And everybody should be back. Yay. Alright. Then we shall return to Coruscant. I need to schedule a meeting with the Senate before inform Master Card and Master Algernon that they will be required to attend the meeting once you have it arranged. Ari instructed Colonel Maxwell, knowing it would be a couple of weeks before meeting time could be arranged with the Senate. Something important, I take it? Maxwell asked. Something that could change space warfare entirely, Ari replied, her face solemn. We need to talk with the rest of the council, and we can't do that here, Stefan said as he started to get up and think through a few things after he and Einar had talked through the situation. Dylan, I'm going to need you to prep your shuttle and be ready to go. Dad, I can't leave Kara here, Dylan immediately said, and from the way you and Einar are talking, I wouldn't have time to take her home on my way to wherever. It's okay, Dylan, Kara said softly, placing a hand on Dylan's shoulder. They're not expecting me, and I can be there. I can let them know that I'm okay on the way to wherever we're going. I appreciate your trust and understanding, my lady, Stefan said as he brought up his wristcom. Card to Valkyrie. This is Payne, Master Card, came the response over the speaker. Captain, I need you to prepare the aft hangar for 2 craft. Already cleared and waiting for you. Since we're supposed to be heading home for resupply, you'll be going that way? We'll need you to make flank speed once we're on board, Stefan said as he thanked Payne and cut the channel. Well, Dylan, I guess you and Kara need to get your stuff together that you'll need. Einar, I'm going to need you to fly with them. Brought your mobile suit, did you? Einar asked as the 2 young people started going around the apartment. I was looking for you and didn't know what I would run into. You 2 ready? Ready, Dylan said as Dylan and Kara said at the same time, causing them to look at each other right after that. Einar couldn't help but smile as Stefan broke into a grin. Alright, we should get going. You're telling me that your labs cannot distinguish the 4th metal in the sample? Am I hearing you correctly, General? Ari asked, a look of disbelief on her face. Yes, General Din, you are hearing me quite correctly. There are traces of twin Tyron pulp alloy, titanium, and steel, but the 4th is a man-made metal, General Eric Sybil informed his former sister-in-law. Or Bothan-made, Ari grumbled, looking the piece of metal over in her hand. Well, intel reports have shown that the Bothans have constructed several more manufacturing facilities on their planet as well as their moon. It's quite possible that they have found a way to construct a new metal for armament, Eric continued. But armor and any other military weaponry items must have a prototype sent to the patent office on Coruscant for registration and cataloging, Ari answered in reply. Agreed, but if the Bothans stole an already approved patent prototype like the one that was stolen from one of our labs a few days ago, then they would have a legally registered prototype that no one else would question. Ari's eyes lifted from the metal in her hand to Eric's face. They did what? A team of smugglers believed to be Bothan infiltrated one of our labs, our armaments testing facilities to be exact. A prototype for suit armor, the one we applied for and received a patent for over a year ago, was stolen. We sent a report to your office regarding the theft. Well, I was indisposed on Enderon at the time, Ari grumbled. Enderon? Eric asked, surprised. Long story, I'll explain later. Right now, I need you to get copies of your security reports and accompany me to Coruscant. We have a Senate to inform in a couple of days, Ari replied, taking her officer's cap and placing it back on her head as she headed out of the Krellian lab back to her transport. I just don't understand why Enderon, Stefan said as he leaned back in his chair. The past few hours had begun to get tiring. On returning to Catan aboard Valkyrie, Stefan had gotten the message from Jade as soon as he entered the house about Ari's request for him and Einar to come to Coruscant for the Senate hearing. With such a lack of time, Stefan had let everyone rest, and Einar contacted his wife while he transferred the mobile suit from the decoy shroud to the docking position on White Squall. Dylan opted to stay home and help Kara getting in touch with her folks, but Andrea had her travel pack ready in no time and continued to work on decoding the data that Einar had pulled. Why is it so hard to picture? Einar asked as he sipped his caf. Timms was on his way back from Enderon to wherever it is that Reinhardt is staging, Stefan said as he leaned forward on the table. They still had their prototype mobile suit stashed away over there, but it was gone when he returned to get it. If you're saying that Bane had it, he must have waited till after, not only when Tams left the first time, but when I left with Nightcaller before he'd retrieved it. Damn, Einar said as he looked down at his cup. We didn't know that when we set up the recon mission, but then what were they doing? But then where were they going? Doing further testing there after everyone was thought to be gone? I don't know, Stefan said as he looked over to Andrea. You still working on it? I'm halfway done on the decryption, Andrea said as she leaned back and rubbed the back of her neck. But some of this is beyond me. We might have wanted to leave this for Christiane to crack. Maybe, Stefan said as he sighed. We'll have to trust her and Ari's codebreakers to handle it. Einar sat back and enjoyed his caf. Andrea was sitting by the computer, decrypting the data and Stefan had closed his eyes for a bit. None of them had slept since they arrived back in Catan. He had spoken to his wife earlier. She was relieved to see him alive and well, but a little worried as he told her what had happened to him and brought her up to speed on the whole Bane situation. I want you to take what you need and go to the temple. Stay at our apartment there until we settle this, he had told her. He knew how Bane thought. She didn't like it, but she knew how to read his facial expression, and he was worried for his wife and his unborn child. How is she? Stefan asked, startling Einar, who spilled caf over his sleeve, bringing laughter from Andrea and her father at his misfortune. Einar just smiled and brushed it off. She's doing well. I think the situation frightened her a bit, but she's going to stay at the temple for now with the lockdown in order. She'll be safe with the guards. Stefan sat up straight, yawning. Good, and sorry about that. I must have been tired. Einar just smiled. Yeah, we all are, I think. And Andrea, take a break from that computer screen. You need to rest too. Andrea turned to them and looked at her father. for approval. He's right. Get something to eat and drink and then go to bed. We need to save our strength. All right, I will. Sleep well, Father. Einar, she responded, bowing to them both before she left the room. Stefan stood up and walked over to the cabinet before bringing back a bottle with a rich Celestin brandy and 2 glasses. I think we could use some of this, my friend. Einar agreed and accepted the glass, admiring the smell of the brownish liquor before taking a small sip. Wow, that's strong, he said as Stefan sat down and took a sip of his. Yeah, I got it from a Wookiee merchant in town. It's very hard to come by. It's illegal to export it, Stefan explained, admiring the bottle. Breaking the rules? Aren't we supposed to uphold them? Einar asked, grinning as he took another sip. Only when they make sense, Stefan responded, laughing, and then placed the drink on the table. What's bothering you, Stefan? Einar asked as he continued to sip the brandy. Ari's calling for an evacuation of the temple when she had me placed under house arrest, Stefan told him as he closed his eyes. The more I think about the Senate's order to do that, and her warnings for the Jedi to leave, I can't help but wonder if this is also part of Bane's doing. Through the Bothans? Stefan nodded softly. If he intended to release you to let me know that he was behind matters, then he has been behind them for a long time. What worries me is the question of how much more preparation does he need before he will strike. Strike? Einar asked. You know him just about as well as I do, Stefan said as he looked over at Einar, and he knows the rules just as I do. Strike hard, strike fast, and then fade away. But I'm wondering how far he went with setting us up. The outbound flight module that we recovered on Hoth? A fake, Stefan said with a deep sigh. I had forgotten about it until Andrea looked up the files. But outbound flight had been found before the Vong invasion. Amazing, Stefan said as he leaned forward. Where was it? On a moon in Chiss space, Stefan told him as he remembered the history. The ships were left mostly intact from what Master Skywalker's journal said. The New Republic was finishing talks to be able to excavate and return the remains, and then the invasion began. It would be something if we could bring them that about later, Einar said, glad to be talking about a brighter subject. It would be nice. Aye, Stefan said as he sipped some of his own brandy, but for the moment we must look at the present. I don't believe the situation has been fully explained, Ari said as she stood before the advisory council. Current circumstances have yielded information that you can spout all of these things all you want, General, Cariella said from his seat at the table. We've listened to these conspiracy theories long enough to... There was no theory, Senator, Ari said as she glared at the Bothan before returning her attention to President Donatch. Sir, you asked me to investigate the possibilities of a force or forces that would attempt to undermine everything that this government has tried so hard to maintain. And the call for the house arrest of Craella huffed and threw his hands up in the air. Master Card was completely uncalled for, despite what the Bothan and Anzadi representatives have claimed. In my opinion, it was an attempt to cover their own doings. Donatch looked over at Craella and leaned forward in his chair. You have proof of this, General Din? Eyewitness statement, Ari told them. I know that some will think it unreliable, but I trust the source, and I would call on him and another to offer their findings and their opinion on the situation. Please, by all means, Donatch said as he looked at the doors, which had begun to open, nodding softly along with others at the table, while others still shook their heads and took noticeable offense at the new guests entering the room. Senators, Stefan Card said as he and Einar bowed before the council, and then greeted his countrymen in a more traditional manner. President Donatch, many tidings to you and your house. We come as bearers of unfortunate news. And many to you and your family, Donatch answered with the proper respect. Master Card, what has happened? Why have the Jedi left Coruscant? There are forces behind this series of events, sir, Stefan began to tell him. One that has used members of this council and the Senate to further their own goals. In this, I will make an accusation based on what knowledge I have. Against whom? Senator Karelia, Stefan answered as he returned the Bothan's deadly stare. It was Senator Karelia who pushed for my immediate arrest, and we believe his people have attempted to further their own agenda as well, with the help of the Anzati and other forces. Danach stared hard at Karelia for a long moment before looking back at his countryman. Stefan, this is a very serious charge you're presenting. I should say so, Karelia burst out. This Jedi has the gall to accuse me of these things, while he has... The Wookiee that served on the advisory council howled a retort and glared at Karelia before the Bothan quieted down and resumed his seat. Stefan softly nodded to him as he continued his story. General Din's private office was broken into by a Bothan intrusion team, while at the same time my home was similarly infiltrated. Both teams had expert code slicers and were attempting to capture designs that had been deemed highly classified, he told them. Master Alderaan, while en route to assess other matters, was captured and detained in operations that involved an interdictor cruiser. Not many forces outside of the New Republic have access to this class of ship. This is... Karelia started to say again. No, I will not be silent, Counselor Kalokia. I will not stand by while this man besmirches my people with these lies. If this body wishes to listen to this, if you are so gullible to let the Jedi lead you around like this, do so. But I will not be part of this. He gathered his datapad and walked out away from the table before exiting the room behind Stefan, Ari, and Einar. To Stefan's mild surprise, there were several others that started to leave with him, gathering datapads and activating comlinks as they went. So it begins, he silently thought. How do we play this now? Einar asked as the two walked down the corridor away from the council chamber. Ari had stayed in session, covering every aspect of what needed to happen. Karelia and the others may be leaving Coruscant, but they won't do that without leaving assets behind to spy or disrupt as much as possible. Not to mention anyone of Bane's adepts that he might have here, Einar mentioned. Exactly, Stefan said as they entered the lift. Those among our numbers that can effectively act as counters to any efforts they might put up and want in place here on Coruscant and in other areas that will be vital. I'll bring Ari up to speed on it later. That damned fool, Bane said as he reviewed the hollow images. Never trust a Bothan to do what you need him to do. As always, my lord, Amron said as he stayed standing behind his master. Do you wish him taken and eliminated? When the time comes, Bane said as he turned off the image. How is the boy's conversion? He is ready, the younger warrior told him, and eager. His time will come, Amron, Bane said. In the meantime, begin shifting our other adepts to our new location. Sometime later. Well, they're no longer on Korriban, Stefan thought as he played the events of the past 2 weeks over in his mind. It had been a stressful period for some of his knights, and Einar was still recovering in the medical center on Edmonton because of that. The Sith leaving their ancestral fortress puzzled him and concerned him at the same time. They had always possessed a strong foothold there, so moving from such a tradition was unusual. But then again, Bane had never been a typical Sith. He looked over some of his notes that he had written over the past few days since his return from Korriban. There were some things to decide. Calista Jussarin, a recent addition to the ranks of the Jedi Knights, had requested to take another under her wing as a Padawan. Though she had proven herself on Korriban, Stefan felt something still tugging at her, It was true that she was one of his students, and he did what he could to teach her well, and her skills as a healer continued to grow. Some things I know we'll need soon, he thought to himself as he continued to write more in his journal. He would have his answer for her in the next few days. For Callista, it had not even been a week since she had returned to the temple. She felt a certain degree of urgency attached to this moment. The force vibrated with it, the urgency pulsing at the back of her mind. At Stefan's direction, she had returned to Coruscant after the time that she had spent in recovery on Catan. Also at his direction, given her growing abilities as a healer, he felt it was time for her to take a Padawan to start passing on her skills. There were many students in the temple who would make a suitable Padawan, yet none of them resonated with her except one. A young girl of 11, Althea Sacha. Although she was a little younger than the traditional age where one is taken as a Padawan, Callista felt a bond with her. Althea was tall for her age, with her long black hair which hung down her back. She was swift and sure-footed in the use of the lightsaber. This skill came in a close second to the more apparent one, healing. In spite of her young age, Althea's skill as a healer was very close to Callista's own. Having observed Althea in her classes over the past few days, Callista approached the council with a request to take the girl as her Padawan. As she stood in the center of the council chambers, she sensed wariness from several. They were still brooding over her actions on Corellia, and some felt that she was not ready for the responsibility of training another. Stefan spoke up, breaking the heavy silence that had fallen over the room. I know that many of you have reservations about Callista taking a student so soon after the death of her master, and given what has transpired on Korriban, I must agree that it is time for her to do so. In addition to many other considerations, I feel that it will help her to remain anchored to the light. After a moment of silence where Callista could feel something pass between the members of the council, Stefan turned to her once more. Callista Jassarin, it is the agreement of this council that you are ready to undertake the training of a Padawan. May the Force guide you both on this new journey. He bowed to her, and she returned it before she turned and departed the council chambers. Althea was sitting in her quarters, a reader on her lap as she studied for her history class. She glanced up at the chime that let her know that somebody was at the door. "Enter," she called. Imagine her surprise when who should enter but Callista Jassarin. She rose and bowed respectfully to the older Jedi. "Good morning, Master Jassarin. What can I do for you?" She moved aside some of her study materials, offering Callista a seat. The young woman sat, taking a deep breath as she gazed at Althea. "Althea Sacha, it would be a great honor for me to train you in the ways of the Jedi and those of the healer." She paused for a moment, watching Althea's face change from surprise to joy. The girl jumped to her feet and threw her arms around Callista's neck. "I would be honored to study with you, Master Jassarin." They sat in Callista's quarters now, having shifted Althea's belongings to Callista's rooms in the section of the temple reserved for knights and their Padawans. Brushing out Althea's long hair, Callista separated a section behind her right ear to make the Padawan braid. The girl's joy was palpable, wrapping around both of them. Taking the section of Althea's hair, Callista's deft fingers worked it into the braid that would mark Althea as a Padawan. Einar sat cross-legged on the temple's roof, overlooking Coruscant. The wind was blowing hard, and the rain soaked his robes completely as he sat there, as he had for the last 2 hours since his return to the temple. Kate was downstairs, asleep. It was 4 a.m. He had come home after an emergency meeting with the council, still in Coruscant. Most had been sent away with the students. He didn't feel cold, just fine, in fact, as the wind threw his hair around and the cold rain bashed his face. In fact, he didn't feel anything, and it scared him. The past months had changed him after the incident on Korriban, when the disobedient healer had run off and led him into a fight with a Sith Lord more powerful than he was. His wife, now pregnant with their daughter, felt distant to him, and it was his fault. Stefan had tried to talk to him again and again after that incident, but he couldn't tell him. He was fine. He was probably just tired. He stood up in the rain, finally giving up and pulling his soaked robe around him. "You're not finished yet," a voice came from behind him. "Are you going to be watching over my shoulder my whole life?" Einar asked, not turning around. "Only when you're being an idiot, Einar." Einar shook his head and turned around, facing the shimmering image of Kevin Din, and then turned back around and sat down, cross-legged. "Hello, eyeliner." Kevin's shimmering form sat down opposite him and smiled. Einar suddenly felt uncomfortable in the presence of his long-dead friend. "You summoned me, Einar." Einar looked at him puzzled, knowing that he probably did. "What's happening to me?" Kevin's smile faded and a look of sadness crossed his face. "You know that as well as I do, old friend. We Jedi pride ourselves on being peaceful and in harmony with all life, but we all know that underneath we are still fighting the battle of staying to the light. And you lost that battle back on Korriban." "I actually won," Einar said, grinning, bringing a look from Kevin that obviously meant that humor was not appropriate at this point. "During your fight, you let your impulses take over. Instead of staying alive, you killed. You murdered him in cold blood, and I'm not going to baby you. You brought this on yourself." Einar looked down, fighting off the memories of that eventful battle. "I know I did, but I didn't mean to. I was dying, Kev. What was I supposed to do?" "You were losing. You were supposed to lose." "So I was just supposed to die?" Einar yelled, feeling suddenly warm with rage. Kevin just nodded. "You swore to uphold an oath by leaning into the dark side and using your anger to win the fight. You broke that." Einar stood up and walked to the end of the edge of the roof, overlooking the endless abyss of the city below. "I didn't want to die. I have a wife. I have a daughter on the way. That's one of the things we did wrong with the new Jedi Order. Possession, love. We should have listened to the old holocrons and kept those aspects of life away. I don't care what you think. I love my wife. I need her," Einar said, fuming and turning around to face Kevin. "Since your mother took me in as her Padawan, my life has been filled with battles, wars, death, corruption. A Jedi is supposed to uphold justice, not fight all his life." Kevin stood up and walked towards him and then stopped at the edge of the roof. "I know, and I fear that you are going to have to continue fighting." Einar looked over at him. "Something you sense?" Kevin's form nodded and his gaze drifted to the stars. "In time, you will know. But the thing I fear is that you won't be there for the Order." Einar shot him a look filled with disgust. "I would never betray the Jedi." "Einar!" Kevin screamed, startling him. "You need to change what has happened here. You need to accept your fate and help yourself. Or receive help from those around you. Otherwise..." Einar took a heavy breath and gazed up at the stars. "I'm fine. I need to take some time off. Maybe meditate." "You need to do more than that," Kevin said, and with a wave of his hand, the image of Kate appeared in a blue shimmer, holding what appeared to be their unborn daughter in her arms, and next to her he saw himself, standing by a hospital bed, smiling. This is what awaited you, your daughter, but I came here to help you because the fates have twisted. I fear that things may turn out differently." He waved his hand again, and the image was replaced by Einar, now all alone, his face tired, his eyes empty, his beard and hair grown long, alone, dark. "What is this?" Einar asked, walking up to the illusion. "This is what the Force has shown me. This is what your future holds for you if you don't make the right choice, right here, right now." Einar turned as the doors to the roof swirled open. Einar, are you here? Stefan said, peeking around the corner. It's almost sunrise. Have you been up here all night? Einar looked back to where Kevin had been standing, but he was gone, along with the terrifying images. Yes, but it's time to come back in, he said as he walked towards the open door. What have you been doing up there? Stefan asked as he held the door open. Just thinking. It's been a long couple of months, Einar said as he stepped inside and closed the door before facing his friend. Stefan nodded and started walking down the stairs. Did it help? Not much. Oh. We're in an ad break. Sorry, guys. Oh. Yeah, we're taking a little bit of an ad break. Hey, eyeliner. Welcome in. Have a great night. Thanks for stopping by. I know. We're almost done with the chapter. Once we finish. I had a busy day, so I'm right there with you. Trying really hard not to yawn. And we're back. Alright. Okay. Not much, but it's better than drinking a whole bottle of rum, Einar said, following him down the stairs. The rest of the way passed without conversation as the event that took place on the roof still unnerved Einar, and he knew Stefan could see it. As they entered the main hallway again, Einar stopped and looked at his friend. I think I'm going to get a little rest. Please excuse me from the council's deliberations this afternoon. And then he took off in another direction, heading for his apartment. He knew he could be nicer to Stefan, but he was afraid that spending too much time close to him, he might pick up on his earlier conversation with Kevin on the roof, and he was not keen on sharing that with anyone. Moments later, he arrived at his apartment and entered the room just as Kate stepped out of the fresh air, wrapped in a towel. He smiled, and she stopped as she saw him, and he could feel the warm, comforting glow coming from her and his little girl in her womb. He walked over and gently wrapped his arms around his wife. I've missed you. I'm sorry I haven't been here lately. Kate laughed and gave him a long kiss as he set her down, his hand sliding into hers, and then he led her to the sofa, pulling her down onto his lap. She smiled and brushed his wet hair from his eyes. I have missed you, she said, and kissed his forehead. Einar smiled and hugged her close before sliding his right hand onto her stomach, trying to sense his unborn daughter. She smiled at him as he closed his eyes and felt the force flow from him, wrapping his unborn child in a current of soothing energy. He could feel the heartbeat, its strength. His child would someday become a powerful Jedi. Then, like a flash, the images Kevin showed him slipped into his mind. Feelings of loss and sorrow filled him, and he jerked his hand back. What's wrong? Kate exclaimed, her eyes wide with shock, fearing for the welfare of her child. Einar swallowed and looked up at her. I'm sorry, I just sensed something happening in the lower levels of Coruscant. Stretching my senses out too far, I guess. He smiled and felt guilty about lying, but he couldn't tell her. Not yet. Not until he knew what it meant. And if Kevin was even correct. Are you sure? She asked. I'm sure. I'm just tired and wasn't expecting that. But I can tell you one thing. Our daughter is going to grow up and become as strong as her mother and twice as powerful as Mr. Card. And she will inherit my good looks, of course, he said, grinning. Kate beamed with joy and gave him a real kiss and then slowly moved away. I love you. He let go of her hand as she slowly stood up. I love you too. He bathed in her joy as she gave him a wink and started walking to the bedroom. I'm going to get dressed. I'll be out soon. He smiled. I'll probably fall asleep in 6.5 seconds. Don't take it personally. She laughed. Einar felt slightly better. His wife always took the bad things in life and made them disappear, if only just for a moment. He crossed his arms behind his head and lay down on the sofa, slowly passing into sleep. Alright. And that is the end of chapter 3. As I said, I do apologize for the slightly clunky grammar. A lot of some of this isn't mine, so I'm trying to kind of edit as I read, so it's a bit challenging. So I hope you enjoyed this evening. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat. Please keep in mind that it's been a while since I've read a lot of these stories, so trying to remember a lot of the details while we're working on it. But it is the evening before Easter, so I don't want to keep you guys too long. I have plans for the day tomorrow, so I want to make sure that everybody else has a chance to get some rest before you get on with your plans for the day tomorrow, whether it's going to church or service or spending time with family. I definitely hope that you all have an opportunity to do that. And thank you for joining me this evening for a little bit of cozy reading. I appreciate all of you, and thank you very much for spending your evening with me. Alright. I believe that my next stream is going to be on when my next regularly scheduled stream is going to be on Wednesday. So please look forward to that. Thank you guys for hanging around and keeping me company and chilling. Aw. I appreciate you guys. I really do. Thank you so much. So I will see all of you guys on Wednesday, and we will see how far we can get. Maybe just 2 chapters. These are a bit longer than the previous story, so we may just get through 2. Oh, you too. Thank you, Harpax. I hope everybody has a lovely rest of their weekend, and take it easy. Get some good rest, and definitely spend some quality time with your family. And we'll see you back here on Wednesday for some more cozy reading. Thank you so much, guys. I love you all. Have a great night. Oh. Hold on. Give me one sec. Before I go. Yeah, you know what? I was gonna write out, but you know what? I think I'm just gonna... Oh, sorry. I think I'm just gonna end on a quiet note this evening. It is later than normal by quite a lot as far as stream goes. So I'm just gonna call it here. Everybody have a lovely evening. Get some good rest. And have a lovely day tomorrow, whatever it is that you're going to do. And I will see you all back here on Wednesday. Have a good night, guys. Thank you so much.